Good morning, everyone. This is John Haller. Right now, I'm being joined by Mark Sutherland from the Sutherland Report from the UK. Good morning, Mark.
Good morning, sir.
And just do a little audio check, make sure there is somebody that will give us just a quick thumbs up that you can hear us. Here's the plan for today and a little bit of sort of housekeeping stuff. So plan for today is Olivier Melnick is in town. He spoke at Fellowship Bible Chapel this morning. He's on his way to the house, and he'll be joining us in about 15 minutes probably from the church. And so we'll talk. We're going to focus a lot on anti-Semitism and that type of thing. And the reason why we're doing it at my house in my studio, I have been able to get downstairs to my studio now. I think we did a thing up last Sunday with Brian Schrager, Mark and I, from my studio, and that is a big relief. I am still just health update. I'm fine. I'm just non-weight bearing for another 11 days and about 1 hour. But who's counting, right? So August 6th, I'm supposed to get my cast off. It's been changed twice. My foot looks awful. Doctor's office says that's normal, and it's going to be swollen like that for 6 months, which is very encouraging. And I start physical therapy on August 10th. So pray that goes well. It'll be nice to be able to get back and get running around and helping with errands and that type of thing, which is what I do to contribute to the house here. And I've been out of the house twice in 4.5 weeks, which is an all-time record for me. So the other housekeeping thing is there will be a technocracy, transhumanism, AI, Mark of the Beast tech roundtable on Wednesday night, July 26th. July 29th at 7 p.m. Eastern in the U.S., 4 p.m. Pacific. So we have a lot to talk about, Mark. So I think before Olivier gets here, let's talk a little bit about what's going on in Iran. I think the thing is, it's this starting and stopping thing that I think frustrates a lot of us. So the latest reports, and it depends who you read and what you read. So there's a report this morning that the last 2 nights, I do not believe that the United States has conducted much in the way of strikes. That may be different than what's being reported because I haven't checked for 20 minutes. It seems like it's hard to keep up on this, but the word, for example, New York Times, Washington Post, a lot of the blogs and X accounts that would be against the war saying Trump has backed off from doing any more strikes because he is concerned about our munitions store of interceptor missiles and that type of thing. I think the New York Times went so far as to report that American military in the Middle East have decided not to intercept missiles unless they're headed directly towards U.S. military facilities. But if they're going towards a radar facility, they're not going to intercept them. Now, I don't know if that's true. Also, people are attributing that to a leak from J.D. Vance, which seems to have some credibility the way J.D. Vance has been going. So, Mark, what's your understanding of what's going on?
I'm looking at some of the same feeds that you're looking at as well. I think what you've just said, absolutely fair enough. And the other thing is we're working very hard to bring information and try and not to give misinformation whatsoever. And it is at times like walking through an oil slick, to say the least. But the interesting thing when you're making a comment on holding back because we may not have the munitions, also I think the Israeli ambassador to the UN, Mike Walsh, has just said something has just come up within minutes, saying that wanting to give the Trump administration a more time, a bit more flexibility to get the Iranians to the table. And personally, this is in my humble opinion, you can't negotiate with these people whatsoever. As other people greater than me that have raised the fact, John, that we are dealing with our Western mindset, thinking we can sit down with them and they will meet us within a Western mindset, which they do not have whatsoever. As other people greater than me have said, the theocracy that we are dealing with, their ideology says that we create the world chaos because we want our 12th Imam Mahdi to come back, etc. That is what we're dealing with. I don't know if that's understood within the Trump administration. I'm sure that some people understand their biblical eschatology, but whether the president of the United States does, respectfully, is a conversation for 4 hours. But all of that is in the mix, John. You know, you're absolutely right. And also, just finally, and I've forgotten the gentleman's name. I think it's Mike Doran on JNS was reminding us of the Straits of Hormuz, of the kill zone there, and then this whole thing of Karg Island. There's been discussions, hasn't there, this week about, is Trump going to take Karg Island to say, I have a piece of Iran now? Do we negotiate from that point? There's so many things up in the air, to say the least.
It certainly is. It's about as fluid a situation as I think I've ever seen.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different balls in the air, so to speak, I guess. So right now, so we have a number of choke points. There are the choke points in the Middle East. Hang on a second here. I'm looking for something to see if it's not in my copy of the Financial Times. So there's a choke point at the Strait of Hormuz, and I don't know that that's going to be resolved. And this shows one of the problems with the current state of asymmetrical warfare. Don't talk a lot about Ukraine and Russia. Russia's just been hammering Ukraine with missiles and Kyiv with missiles. But the interesting thing about missiles and drones and that sort of thing is they're very effective at bringing disruption to your enemy. For example, let's look at Ukraine. So Russia is really bogged out in Ukraine. They're supposed to be calling up 300,000 to 1 million people. Those guys are going to be sent to the front. And some of the stats that I've shown, and admittedly, these may come from accounts that lean pro-Ukrainian. There's a number of very good analysts that are out there talking about this. And even the pro-Russian guys have said Russia's lost 1 million men dead in this war. And this has been going on for 4.5 years. And they all said, all the guys on the pro-Russian side, this will be over in 3 days. Then it was 2 weeks. Then it was 3 months. Now we're 4.5 years. And now the narrative is, well, Russia's just doing this to bleed all of the munitions out of the West. But the other side of that, too, is, and Ukraine's been very effective with drones and strikes and missiles. So they've pretty much shut down the Russians' ability to transport things through the Sea of Azov. So if you look at a map of Ukraine, you have the Crimean Peninsula. Ukraine has pretty much shut off the Crimean Peninsula from fuel and resupplying. They are now, and they've destroyed a lot of ships in the Sea of Azov. I don't know the exact numbers. I don't think anybody does. But if you remember, there was also an attack on the Kerch Bridge pretty early on in this. And that Kerch Bridge is not in a great state of repair. The trains that can go across it are very limited in how big the train can be. That would be used to resupply Crimea. Trucks are limited because the bridge has been damaged and the railway structure has been damaged. And a lot of people think that it may eventually collapse. I don't know. That's a critical infrastructure item. And so Ukraine is doing that. But the interesting thing, if you look at all the good things or great things, depending on your view, or bad things that they've done with drones and missiles, is that they're not able to advance their front lines with the use of that technology. That takes bodies on the ground, and Russia's had a problem. So I'm going to get Olivier set up, and then we'll Mark, you keep talking while I get Olivier set up. Hang on.
No worries. I will do. The other thing, I just want to go back to what I think Mike Duran was, I think that's his name, was saying on JNS in regard to the Straits of Hormuz, and to remind people about that whole bottleneck, and also to remind people where China get their oil from, which is from Iran. And as he was reminding us, that there is also this swap of technology in regard to China, where they've got all the facial recognition technology and stuff, so they can track down civilians. And especially as it reminded in regard to the protests that happened on the streets from, I think, the 7th and 9th of January, and then appallingly anywhere between 40 to 80,000 of their own citizens they then murdered on the streets. They're also hanging young Iranians, seems to be daily, in regard to the protest that those young brave young Iranians undertook against the regime on those days. So bear that in mind, that it's this whole thing where China gets its oil from. So here's another choke point, and also their relationship with China. Now, John has just been talking about drone. Olivier, good to see you. And I'll just quickly finish say this, that about drones. And there was a very, I'm just going to look at this because I want to try and bring this up just quickly. There's an article again in the New York Times reminding us of the drone technology and how advanced that is progressing, and the testing by 2 military companies American companies in California. And
by the way, Mark, that article will be a major subject of discussion at the Technology Roundtable on Wednesday, July 29th.
Okay, brilliant.
Brilliant. But that's a very important article. I will try to put a behind the paywall link to that article. It's in this morning's opinion section of this morning's New York Times. It's been out there on the internet for about 4 or 5 days.
Because
it's a phenomenal article.
It's a phenomenal article. And just quickly, I'll just round that up, because what it raises the lack of human participation in regard to the operation of the drones. That because of AI, the drone is virtually fully AI. It's down to the AI in what direction that goes in, how it conducts itself, and of course when it fires, the ammunition that it's got on, and then who it fires against. That raises another issue. But it is a phenomenal article, and there was a test in regard to the technology at the end of last year. And John, this backs up totally what you're saying about what drone technology can hold back, and then when it goes over the front line, the damage that it could do to the enemies. But at the end of the day, boots on the ground in certain places. So I'll just end with that. I'm very glad that you're going to be discussing that article. And Olivia, as I say, thank you for joining us. It's lovely to see you. So thank you.
Say hello, Olivier. Say hello.
I just did.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
I understand you've been at a conference with some other people that I know very well. So you've been at the Go Therefore conference in Ohio.
Correct. Yes, that was Friday and Saturday, and today I just spoke at John's church and
brilliant.
Rushed here to do the prophecy update.
Right. So Olivier will be here for about maybe an hour or so. Then he has to go catch a plane home. We usually we would feed our guest speakers at Fellowship Bible Chapel, but today we're going to give them a coupon to go to Taco Bell, I think. Right.
I'll pass on.
Yeah, you don't want to get on a plane with a bunch of other people that have been to Taco Bell. So I want to talk while I have Olivier here. Olivier, maybe you could just give us a quick summary of what you talked about yesterday at the conference and today at Fellowship Bible Chapel. And since your expertise is in anti-Semitism, we do want to focus on that while you're here. And I have a couple of ways I want to go with this, but sort of give us a summary of what you talked about the last couple of days on that topic.
Yes, thank you. So if anybody has a, no, I'm hearing myself with echo. Is that normal?
Yeah, you're going to hear a little echo.
Okay. All right. So, I mean, I like to hear myself. So any question you might have beyond my visit here today, you can find me at shalominmessiah.com or Olivier at shalominmessiah.com. I spoke on this development of different accusations building upon each other over the last 60 years. And it goes like this: colonization, occupation, apartheid, genocide. And I have clearly seen in the last 6 years, since the advent of Yasser Arafat, the epitome of the Palestinian from Egypt. And so I've seen this progression where first Israel was accused of colonizing land that was not theirs, and I'm summarizing. And then once colonized, then they would occupy some of the land with their people, but that became not enough, so they wanted to push people away to colonize more. So that's apartheid in the eyes of the world, of course. And then recently, for the last, well, I could say almost 3 years, definitely since October 7, 2023, genocide from almost every corner of the world, ignoring all the genocides of the history of humanity, ignoring those are going on right now, ignoring the genocide that Hamas tried to commit on October 7th, and accusing Israel of genocide with no factual foundation. So that's what I did in my presentation, giving the definition of those 4 points, then showing the example of how it was misused and continues to be misused, and then giving a Bible defense with the scriptures that said that God has given the land to Israel. That is a divine decree. And that is, if you have a problem, you have a problem with God, not with the Jewish people. And so, and I give some examples, and I'm sure you, John, are going to give some of those. One of them is the one you brought up on your screen about Amnesty International.
Yeah, so let's just recap that real quickly for everybody. So it was back in, 2024, 2025, a couple years, a year or so, year and a half after Israel went into, after October 7th. And if you remember, October 7th happened, and it was many weeks before Israel really made any incursion into into Gaza. But I have videos. I have a video of Mamdani about October 20th, October 20th, 2023, before Israel went into Gaza, saying that that Israel was committing genocide. There were many accounts, dormant accounts, Telegram accounts that pretty much activated before the invasion from Gaza took place on October 7th, 2023. So a lot of people had advanced notice of it.
Yep.
And so on October 20, and immediately within a day, everybody on the left, the pro-Palestinian left, was calling this a genocide. And so a genocide report came out from Amnesty International, and it's kind of interesting the way they phrase everything. Let me move forward here. It's interesting. At Amnesty International, in the report, they say, we are independent of any government, political ideology, economic interest, or religion. It's just like there's such a big fat lie. It's amazing that they do it and they get away with it. But in the executive summary, they go through the glossary, apartheid, and all this stuff. But I think I can blow this up a little bit more. Yeah, here we go. So this is the executive summary of the report. Look at the first sentence of the report. Amnesty International, this non-ideological organization, they started about talks like an apocalypse, quoting somebody from Gaza. And then the sentence begins on 7 October 2023.
Yep.
Israel embarked on a military offensive on the occupied Gaza Strip of unprecedented magnitude, scale, and duration. Olivier Melnick, you've been down to Gaza many times, to the Gaza envelope. Is that a true or false statement?
100% false. I've been there 4 times since the war. And it is not, that statement is actually false on so many different levels, because nothing happened on October 7th except for Hamas invading Israel and trying to commit genocide. Anything that would be a response, not an attack, would not happen until October 8th. So that right there is already false. But they make it sound like Israel went in to destroy Gaza and the Palestinians. It's just not true.
So one thing that I've done when I'm in Israel, and I never really get a good answer to this question, is so there's a lot of theories in Israel, and a lot of people are really upset that there's been no comprehensive analysis of what led up to October 7th in terms of why there were clearly warnings that were ignored and things that were not taken to heart. And so I always ask the question, though, so if Israel knew this was coming and knew that it would be an order of magnitude along what actually happened, which I think exceeded what anybody expected, and people may have ignored warnings because of the politics in Israel. I'm willing to accept that. And it may go both ways. We don't know yet. That those reports have not been done. There have been some reports indicate that elements of the IDF were negligent in what they were doing. But my question is, if on October 6th, the command structure, the political and military command structure and security structure in Israel knew that October 7th was going to happen, what do you think they would have done on October 6th to prevent that from happening?
Well, they would have brought, and I'm not a military, analyst, but I think they would have brought IDF units all around the border to prevent the invasion. But they would have not invaded Gaza.
I disagree. I think they would have done exactly what they did. If they really had the concept in mind that they're going to do an October 7th of that magnitude, they would have gone into Gaza and done exactly what they did. But the problem would be, imagine how the world would be reacting if they didn't have a bunch of dead Israelis, they didn't have a bunch of hostages and that type of thing. It would be far worse than it is now.
And that's why I think that, based on Israel's previous history and how they handle modern warfare in the Middle East, they probably would have brought troops, maybe really a large amount, to prevent from the Hamas terrorists and the Gazan Palestinians. Because we have to remember that 75% at least of the Palestinians in Gaza and in Judea Samaria support what happened on October 7th. Correct. It's not just Hamas.
Correct.
So I don't agree with you, John. We don't agree.
I guess we don't. So I'm having a little, my camera's a little off kilter. I'm leaning left or right or whatever.
Not politically.
Hopefully you're leading right.
There's a Bible verse on that, by the way.
Yeah, if there is. Can I just quickly say something?
Sure.
I want to come back to what you were saying. About Amnesty International, the Times of Israel in 8th of January 2025, because I remember this. Amnesty International has reportedly suspended its Israel branch for not towing the movement's line that Israel committing genocide in the Gaza Strip and accused the Israel branch of anti-Palestinian racism, the New York Post reported.
Okay.
So they shut down that office because they were saying you're not following our line. And also just to remind everyone that where were the BBC and everyone else getting their figures from in regard to the amount of deaths that were going on in Gaza, and they were getting it from the health ministry, which comes from Hamas, it's Hamas run. So just to remind everyone of that. Okay.
Yeah. So I put up on the screen a report that came out last year from the Civil Commission on October 7th crimes by Hamas.
Yep.
I'll put a link in the show notes to this document. And there is a 42-minute video that sort of accompanies it. I'll try to find a link to that. I think I might have that on my computer someplace. But I will tell you, if you watch that, you will understand what happened on October 7th, but you will be, there's no way that you will not be completely sickened.
Yeah.
By what you see in that report, because this report details the sexual violence against women and men in connection with this attack by Hamas. So that's one thing. So Olivia, you haven't seen that 42-minute video, have you?
No, but you're going to send me the link.
I'm going to send you. So now I'm really obligated because it's on the record.
It's public.
I just think there was a lot, and I've talked to people. I was able to talk to the first responder at the Nova Festival site when he got there and listened to him describe some of the things he saw. And one of the first IDF people to get there, Jerome Kedar, who works with the Israel guys and some others. We spent the day with him over at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, if you remember.
We did.
Very impressive individual.
Yep.
Physically, but go ahead.
No, I was going to say this is what we would have seen if Dr. Mengele and the Nazis had GoPro cameras.
Yeah.
That's all I can say.
Yeah.
Mark, you're getting ready. I think you're trying to get an interview with, I forget her first name, Posner?
Yes, and I've forgotten her first name. I think it's Sarah Posner.
Yeah, I think I met her at the Middle East Forum Conference. She wrote a book called The Pharmacist of Auschwitz.
That's right, about the Romanian, and his name is completely gone on the book I have, which I've just got. A book is downstairs. And Olivier, what you've just said, I fully support you in what you've just said. You're absolutely right. And that book is then linking with slightly different direction, but is linking pharmaceutical experiments amongst other appalling experiments that have gone on. And of course, IG Farben, Bayer, they are subjects, e.g. looking at them, that are close to my heart because it's important history. And I think it's been very important history that's been relevant over the last few years without raising and getting us in trouble with YouTube. But this is all real from various experiments that had gone on in there. And I'll just say this, which is a subject, because I'm in the middle of producing a documentary on this with my dear friend Melanie Kreitz-Packard on this, which is, I have publicly said, when we look at the transgender issue and the removing of body parts from young people, I have said that there is no difference between that and the physicians doing that and the Mengele experiments again. And that all ties up with Big Pharma. So some people, I do apologize if it's too early in the morning over there to say these things, but I don't apologize because this is the reality of what we are dealing with. When you look at the history And you see Mengeler's obsession with experiments on twins, experiments on children, and turning around and saying, well, you either go to the death chamber or you come with me, comments and others. Yeah. But she is someone that I would love to interview, John, or we would love to interview her because of her books and the other books that she has written about this. And I just implore, just quickly say this as a plug. I'm standing in my little library, is also downstairs. I implore, and I don't find enough time to read at the moment. I need to. I implore people to get these books and get the history books and read the history and to familiarize yourself with what has gone on, because as Olivier and John have pointed out, you will then fully understand yet again the appalling beyond word actions of the 7th of October and going back to the Shoah, that this is factual. This is not a movie. It's not imagination. Olivier, when John and I were over there last November, I was in Israel twice last year, but when we were there last November, we stood outside the Bibas family house, which are pictures that never leave me, because we're regularly reminded of what happened to that dear family as well. So this is the reality. Sorry, I'll just be quiet. But yeah, we want to try and get hold of her to interview.
Thank you for sharing that. This is absolutely true. The parallel between Nazi crimes and what happened in Nova Festival and October 7th, there's too many to ignore them.
Yeah.
So last Sunday, Olivier, on my update, I played a video of the mayor of New York, Mamdani, who is a radical left. He's like the embodiment of the Red-Green Axe alliance that our friend Triple Loud. I mean, he embodies everything that you would criticize or critique about that particular aspect of the world politics and religion. He's a Muslim. He's radical. He's a Islamic supremacist. His wife may be worse. I don't know how that's possible, but I think that I can prove that. So he said, well, if Bibi Netanyahu comes to New York to speak at the UN, I'm going to arrest him. The interviewer, this was from the New York Times, said, well, what if you can't? Are you sure you can do that? And he said, well, we're looking at it. So a couple of days later, he came out with a video. I'm not allowed to arrest Bibi Netanyahu when he comes to New York. But then he launched into this tirade against Jews and Israel. And it was not 24 hours before someone shouting Allahu Akbar stabbed somebody outside a synagogue on the Upper West Side of New York, which you know is a very nice neighborhood. Do you think they're connected in any way? Mamdani's comments?
No. Is this sarcasm?
Yeah, well, I mean, you're French. You guys do your best humor is sarcasm, right? So just
no. So I saw on my Twitter feed this rabbi on the street being interviewed about the event, about the stabbing, and he's about my age, mid-60s, I think. And he was saying something that was very telling. He said, back in the days, the only time we needed protection in the area is the mayor came to speak in the area and he needed his personal protection. Today, whenever the mayor speaks, we need protection. Mm-hmm. So it's an inverted reality. It's a shift in what's happening in the world. And Mamdani is emboldening those who have been wanting to do acts like this for a while now.
Yes.
And I don't think for a second that Mamdani thought that he had the authority to arrest Bibi Netanyahu. But I'm convinced that he has higher aspirations. He is looking at becoming maybe a senator or the governor of New York. And he's basically telling his audience, this is what I think right now when I don't have the power to do it. Stay with me and we're going to do great things against Israel when I have the power to act. That's my opinion.
Well, and I think when you say against Israel, it's going to be against Christians too.
Hmm.
So I want to step back as one of the big, clearly anti-Semitic attack took place. I believe it was a father and son last year, latter part of last year, at Bondi Beach I think that's in Melbourne,
Australia, yeah, during Hanukkah.
That's right. It was a Hanukkah celebration, so it would have been late in the.
They were lighting the menorah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the Robert Spencer at Jihad Watch posted this morning, and it's a report that's been released in Australia. Now, it was September 2025. I don't know if that's when the report was prepared, like it was prepared before Bondi Beach, but clearly this is out there. It's called A National Response to Islamophobia. So Islamists attacked Jews, and I don't know how many were killed, 9, 10, somewhere in that.
15.
Oh,
15 or 16.
15.
Wow. Okay. Families, parents, children, and they were just there at the beach celebrating Hanukkah.
They were not protesting anything. They were not pushing an agenda. They were together to light the menorah to remember God's provision and God's protection during the Maccabean revolt. And they basically were celebrating Hanukkah. And I think one of the victims was a Holocaust survivor.
I believe that's right.
Yes, that's right.
And so, but look at this, a national response, Australia's special envoy to combat Islamophobia. I'm just going to ask, so people in Australia, I know that we have a lot of followers in Australia, is there a similar report, a national response to anti-Semitism? I'm not aware of one.
I'm not aware of one. Now, this was published in September of 25, which means it was prepared probably a little before that. And September 25 would be at least 2 to 3 months before Hanukkah.
Okay. But look at the way they characterize it. So any opposition to Islam is Islamophobia.
No question.
They completely flip the definition upside down. And there's a quote at the top of the page from Anthony Albanese, who is the Prime Minister of Australia. And people in Australia, you need to be in serious prayer and spiritual warfare against this. He said that this report is a major contribution towards social inclusion. Olivier, any comment?
Well, when I look at this, when I hear social inclusion, it makes me think, and maybe I'm skipping topics here, it makes me think of Mamdani's total inclusion of all the ethnic communities in New York and ignoring the Jewish community, which has been there for so long.
And it's the biggest Jewish community outside of Israel.
Exactly. And calling it, Little Palestine. So there is this global effort to flex under Islamic ideology because I think it's a fear. There's a fear.
Somebody, by the way, suggested that the response should be when Netanyahu comes, that Mamdani should be ordered to drive Netanyahu around in a limousine and be blaring on a loudspeaker, "This is the Prime Minister of Israel who is highly favored in the United States by President Trump."
This sounds slightly biblical.
It does have that ring. I want to just read a paragraph, and then we're going to go to the problem internally in Israel with recent developments over the last few days of violence, last week, but particularly in the last 3 days, violence against settlers in Judea and Samaria, and how that's a political wedge issue. But you need to understand the orientation of this Australian Islamophobia report. Look at one of the first pages in the report, acknowledgement of country. Many Australians, and understand this comes from a mindset that is infused through Qatari funding and all kinds of propaganda, this woke nonsense that white colonialism is bad. So many Australians remain unaware of the deep and enduring relationship that has existed between Muslim communities and Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Australians. Historical evidence reveals Muslim traders from Indonesia journeyed regular to our land from at least the mid 1600s. And so it's just all this kumbaya stuff that they're saying is they never came to take slaves or anything like that. It's shocking to me.
John, just a couple of things, or three things. First of all, Albanese has a record of attending pro-Palestinian rallies from a young man until recently. So people need to bear that in mind, his relationships with other political leaders over here, as they're all on the same mindset. Also to remind people about what happened in Sydney soon after the appalling events on the 7th of October. And there was that Muslim individual celebrating that, saying that he was invigorated by what he had seen. And also to remind, I mean, there's other incidences, but that was infamous. And then also the other one where two Australian nurses or hospital workers, one was a nurse, maybe another was a doctor, and then they were on a podcast with a Jewish Israeli citizen, and saying, you know, when they discovered that, and then warning him that maybe it wasn't a good idea that he went into an Australian hospital. So this is the background that's been going on in Australia. Plus restaurant, I think Jewish restaurant was firebombed, also attacks on a synagogue as well. So this, as Olivier has said, I know we're being a bit sarcastic, but the whole thing of when this kind of thing is put out there, what it then stirs up in regard to people and regard to the anti-Semitism, and nothing is done about it. And also I would then just finally say people need to explore that history and what was then written there, John, as well. They need to explore that history. I'll be quiet.
Okay.
You know, 2 weeks after the events of Bondi Beach, there was a burning of a daycare center, and with graffiti written on the wall. And I got the video, F the Jews, 2 weeks after.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like they didn't learn anything.
No.
Well, especially if they were reading this report, they would think that, well, we can't do anything because we will be called Islamophobic. That's the worst thing in the world.
That's right.
So let's move to Israel, because I know you're headed to Israel soon, a couple times maybe between now and the end of the year, and you have part of your ministry over there to help out particularly soldiers, I think, and families of soldiers, because this is, I mean, what do you see when you're over there? I mean, has this been a stressful time for the IDF and other people in Israel?
It has been. We support several units of reservists, and what people need to understand is that the IDF gets funding from the government, the Air Force gets the top of the line, then the Army gets what's next, and then the reservists get the breadcrumbs, and it's sometimes very little or nothing. So it's a challenge. So we have been raising funds to provide them with protective gear, ATV, ambulances, vests, helmets, goggles, drones. And the Lord has been very faithful and generous through many people watching us. Thank you for that. The IDF right now, they're still working in Gaza, very active at Lebanese border. And we're going back in August, and probably our biggest challenge right now as a ministry to help them for the next few years is going to be how to deal with PTSD. The wives and mothers of those soldiers are suffering. The children are suffering. The soldiers are coming back. The rate of divorce and suicide is through the roof. And so we're trying to figure out ways to help them with PTSD on top of supplying them with the equipment. But there is a great opportunity to reach out to Israel and to show Christian love and to open doors for the gospel.
And it would be fair to say that you can't go into any Jewish community in Israel and not quickly run into people who have been personally impacted, either family or friends, of injured or killed IDF soldiers. Is that a fair statement?
I was last August, a year ago, I was there with my pastor, and we had appointment after appointment, meetings after meetings, and we met people on the street. I remember going to Golda for ice cream, and the owner of that ice cream parlor started talking to us. We told him why we were there, and he said, "Come with me." And he pulled his phone and showed us videos of how they arrested terrorists on a street where he lives. And he said, "I have more of this if you're interested." And they, like you said, they all lost a family member, a friend, a neighbor. Everybody's affected.
So let me move now to the situation particularly in Samaria and Judea, because this is a constant problem. Because if there was, I think the Israeli government is fearful of full open elections in the area of Judea and Samaria, in the Arab parts, because Hamas would probably win. I think that's a fair statement.
That'd be a disaster.
And it would be, but it shows you, but their support in those areas is, from surveys that IDSF and other opinion surveys have done, the support of those areas is 80-90% towards Hamas. So they would win in what's called the West Bank, just like, Gaza. And you did a presentation. You have a picture on your computer over there. I don't know if you can hold it up and show
Which one?
The slide there that you have up on your computer.
Yeah, it's quite something. Hold on, let me.
There you go. So this is this. I need to hang on a second here. I need to stop the screen.
You did not know this, right? I want John to say publicly that I taught him something.
What's that, Olivier? I can't quite see that.
Hang on a second here. I got to figure out how to blow his solo layout.
I can also send you a screen grab real quick, and you can publish it.
There we go. So this is a picture used in his presentation today at FBC. This is Yasser Arafat.
Yep.
And Yasser Arafat was from Egypt, probably the nephew of the Hajj al-Husseini who worked with Hitler in World War II. But tell us what's significant about the way Arafat is dressed.
Well, the headdress is known as a keffiyeh, which is an Arabic headdress, and there are meanings to the different designs on the headdress, and I don't have time to go into that. But what's very unique to the way he was wearing it is you would be hard pressed to find one picture of Arafat through the ages where he doesn't wear his keffiyeh pinned to his jacket in the shape of Israel, or let me rephrase that, in the shape of Palestine. And that's subliminal propaganda. Yeah, they never talk about it, but every picture, different ages, he wears it the same way. Nobody else wears it that way. It's on the head and over the shoulders, in the back. He wore it in the shape of Palestine.
And that was done for a specific reason. Because and the keffiyeh has kind of a meaning. It actually comes from Mesopotamia.
It's subliminal.
Region, but it does essentially mean from the river to the sea.
From the river to the sea, Palestine shall be free.
The fishing nets.
To which I answer, from the sea to the river, Israel is forever.
Olivier, what's also fascinating about that, or infamous about that, is when that whole thing in 1967, when he turns it into victimization, because after the 6-day war and the winning by Israel, and yet another war that they didn't start, but that major one, and then turning it into victimization. And as you know, I don't have to lecture, where, is training in Russia along with Abbas. And we must never forget that in regard to the propaganda. And just finally, and I can't find it, but there is this accusation that he went to a PR company somewhere in New York, who then gave him advice in regard to switch it to being a victim. And I cannot find, I've been trying to find the truth of that, and if that PR, what PR company was that, is a bit like Sullivan and Cromwell and what they've got up to at various points.
I've heard some of that, and I don't have the source either.
Yeah,
So,
thank you.
And I've also heard that the Hajaman al-Husseini was Arafat's uncle. I think that's pretty fairly well established.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or certainly a very close cousin.
Yeah.
But that the Hajj went to Iraq after he got booted out of Bosnia, after Germany after World War II. He fled to avoid prosecution, and he ended up in Iraq, and I believe lived with the uncle of a guy in the Ba'ath, a guy who founded the Ba'ath Party over the Hashemite king of Iraq, and his nephew was a guy named Saddam Hussein.
Yeah. Oh, well. Well, I'm probably going to get you in trouble for that, but he could possibly be both his uncle and his cousin.
Yes, but okay.
Never mind.
That's a scab we shouldn't really scratch.
Olivier, just quickly, John, that verse, Hosea 4, verse 6, my people are destroyed through lack of knowledge. We're not saying any of this to show up. We want people to have the knowledge. We want people to have the historical knowledge where all of this has come from, and also the power of propaganda, and that we're not fighting flesh and blood, but principalities and powers, and then how this evolves every decade in regard to information. And Oslo is another discussion in regard to that as well. Olivier, sorry.
Okay, so I have Olivier. I want to talk about the situation in the West Bank. So let me give like a 1-minute summary. So about a week ago, there is a village. It was a unauthorized settlement in the Mount Gerizim area up near Nablus on Route 60. It was torn down a couple times, rebuilt, and they finally got permission to build it. And when they established these settlements, the Zionist settlers go in and they bring in trailers, caravans, I think they call them over there, to live in until they can build houses. And our friends Ari Romwins and Jerry McGill, when they started their farm down in Judea, they did the same thing. And last week, that village was the subject of an arson attack, and 30 buildings were destroyed. This week, there were some incidents in that same Nablus, Mount Gerizim, Mount Ebal area. Mount Gerizim in Deuteronomy in Joshua was the Mount Gerizim was the Mount of Blessing. Mount Ebal was the Mount of Curses. They divided Israel into two different, they put some on the one mountain and some on the other mountain. And they shouted the blessings and curses. And of course, on the Mount of Curses is where the altar of Joshua is. So my group has gone there, and it's really a very authentic site. But in that area, there are farmers. In fact, I saw a video from our friend Aaron Lipkin this week that in the area of Mount Gerizim, he says, look, this just came up the last 2 days, a new settlement on Mount Gerizim, in the Mount Gerizim area. And he showed the trailers that had been moved in to establish it. So this is happening all over Judea and Samaria, and it's driving the Palestinian Arabs really out of their minds. So there was a group of Jewish settlers that I don't know if they went to find the dogs that they use when they shepherd, but they had been trapped by the Palestinians. This is the story I've seen. They released the dogs. Then a group of Palestinian Arabs attacked them, started throwing rocks at them. This is very common up there. And one of the guys, he's an IDF soldier reservist, home on leave. They grabbed his gun and they shot and killed a guy. And so you see here on the front page of today's Jerusalem Post, the funeral for the guy who got killed. And now the IDF has gone in. I believe they killed about 4 terrorists involved in this attack on Jews in Samaria, the West Bank. Then they went out on another raid and they arrested about 70 So this is internally in Israel. So this is one of the fronts that Israel faces. We talk about Gaza, we talk about Lebanon, but the internal front is also something that seems to be heating up. Any comments, Olivier?
Well, there is a lot of activity in the territories. And about 2 years ago, during one of our trips, we got connected with an organization, and I'm still connected with them, called Moledet, which means homeland. And this is a private organization. They're still raising funds and they're trying to get approval from the Israeli government, and they're almost there. They install cameras and sensors around the farm property of the settlers in Judea, Samaria. And they monitor, and their headquarters is in Sderot, right by the Gaza border. And I've been there several times. They monitor any activity. I don't know if you remember the show Person of Interest, when they would have those little squares on all the stuff moving. Well, they have the same technology that they've developed, and anybody who's not part of their community, categorized as a friend or a neighbor, they will show that they're on their property, and with the sensors and the cameras, within 2 minutes, they can either have a police officer, an EMT, ambulance person, or an IDF soldier on the location. But this is done, again, for protection. This is defensive. When I was there and toured there a couple of farms and the way they were installing things, I was told by the farmers, the settlers, we don't even sleep at night. We have to watch our flock, our sheep, our cows. The Palestinians come, they bring a car, they burn the cars, and then what they will do is they will build homes that they don't finish. They have a foundation with metal parts coming out. They put a half a dozen of them. They claim it as a new village, and it's like a spreading of a cancer, and nobody's saying anything about that. So they have to protect their area. Sometimes those settlers have to protect tens of thousands of acres. And so this company, Moledet, is trying to help them. But again, it's a case of Israeli settlers settling on their own Israeli territory and just wanting to live there to defend themselves and protect their family and their farm. They're not going out to kill Palestinians. That is not true. Anything that happens is in defense. And of course, it's flipped, and the whole world is buying it because that's what they want to buy.
Right. So I want to ask you, well, I know you have to leave here in 10 or 15 minutes, so I want to ask you.
Oh, I missed my flight already.
Okay, well, then we don't care then. You're in for the duration. I want to bring up a report. So there's a legislation that's pending in the United States right now, and it's kind of going through the approval process. It's called the National Defense Authorization Act, and it does have some significant provisions in it. For example, I think it's now Section 219. The House approved it the other day in a vote 216 to 212. 7 Republicans, like 7 so-called Republicans, like Thomas Massey and some others, voted against it, but 6 Democrats voted yes. So it passed 216 to 212. And this is a funding bill to allow, and Section 219 provides for close cooperation between Israel and the United States, specifically Israel, on technology, intelligence, development of weapons, joint production of weapons, and that type of thing. So I think it's significant in that sense. It sort of brings together a lot of what's been going on in the background for a long time between the United States and Israel on the military and technology sides. But the anti-Israel, pro-Iranian, woke right people have gone ballistic on this. saying that this is a Israeli takeover of the U.S. military. So while it's significant, it's being used in a very bad way. So there was a post the other day. Let's see. So, and I want to ask you about this because it involves, here it is. This is from Catherine Austin Fitz. Let me see if I can blow this up a little bit. I'll share the screen. So Catherine Austin Fitz is a financial commentator. And I think if I had to describe her politically, she leads very libertarian. I think that's a fair assessment. And so we love, people on the right love her. So in response to this report, here, I'll just read what she posted the other day. So the National Defense Authorization Act passes. Now, it's in front of the Senate. We don't know if they'll remove certain things. And it does have provisions, by the way, in there about, it incorporates another act that was submitted. And Rashida Tlaib hates it, so it's probably something we might like. It's called the Abraham Accords Cooperation Act. So, so it sort of provides for a mechanism for funding for people who agree to the Abraham Accords. And so it's significant. And I think this has prophetic overtones from it pretty clearly. But I want to read what Catherine Austin Fitz said. By the way, Mark turned me on to a speech that she gave at a conference earlier this year, maybe a few weeks ago, where she, in her presentation, she said, "Oh yeah, I have a Great American report, and my Great American for 2024 was Thomas Massey." So she would characterize herself as America First, although I think she lives in the Netherlands, and I'm not sure I've figured out whether there's any hypocrisy there or not. But she said this, and I want your raw opinion to this, Olivier. I'll try not to.
It's going to be raw.
Okay. Those flock and Axon cameras in your town. How do you feel about the Israeli military having access to them and training your local police and sheriff how to do to you and your family and property what has been done to Gaza? So what do you think?
Well, it's extrapolation to the extreme. She's basically saying that if we allow this to happen, we're introducing, maybe the way I'm saying it is wrong, but we're introducing the possibility of genocide in America.
That's exactly what she's saying, because the Jews do it in Gaza, right?
Right.
Okay. Don't be nice about it. Call her an anti-Semite, the anti-Semite that she is,
Yeah, it is anti-Semitic. And there's so many ways that people are wrapping their anti-Semitism in political rhetoric, not to say the word anti-Semitic, anti-Zionist, and it's just crazy. And there's no truth in that. And again, it's disgusting.
So, but you understand, you've been to Israel. Israel is a very small place. It doesn't take
New Jersey.
Like we were there, Trump was coming to town. And so we said, we got to get out of Jerusalem. So we drove down to Jericho, all the way up the Jordan Valley, all the way up through the Golan Heights, then all the way along the Lebanon-Israel border, all the way over to Nahariya. And that took like half a day. It took like 5 hours. And
5 to 6 hours.
Yeah, that included all the stops, though, along the way to sightsee and take pictures and
the stops for you to get snacks.
Right. Yeah. And try to figure out how to use the fuel pump, which I never did. I had to get my friend in Nahariya, and then we finally had this Russian. It's sort of a mix of Hebrew, English, and Russian telling me how to use the pump, because they're not labeled the same way over there. They don't have a different size I didn't want to put diesel in a gas engine.
It's very simple. When you pump in Israel, you pump from right to left.
Okay, that didn't help. So, and they're different colors. So, but it's clear that these people are taking this National Defense Authorization Act, which is significant from a prophetic standpoint. I'm not denying that, but
Right.
they're twisting it into this anti-Semitic trope that the Jews control the world. And like if you've been to Tower of David,
Yeah.
inside the Jaffa Gate, there's a major command and control center in there. And even 10 years ago when we were in Israel, we're noticing like there are cameras everywhere. But why do they do that? Well, they do that because they have these attacks like in Samaria, and they
That's
have
right.
to go find the people. They have attacks at holy sites. So all the holy sites have cameras all over the place. So there's a trade-off. But she's saying, well, Israel, they commit genocide in Gaza, so they're going to come and train our police to commit genocide in the United States.
No pun intended, they're weaponizing the statement. That's what they're doing, but to their advantage.
Right.
I wonder if Mark has any comment on that.
Yeah, Mark, what do you think?
Again, I ask people to go and research this, but no, I agree. I'm saying the obvious, words are so powerful, they're sort of hung out there, but it's then looking at the history and looking at where this is actually come from. But the important thing, I'll just quickly say this, what people don't seem to understand is when America turns around, they turn around and say, right, we are giving this amount of money to Israel, but all militarily, etc., help aid package along those lines. All of that money is then used in America in regard to the military hardware is then given to Australia, but it's made to Israel, but it's made by American companies. And just finally, the amount of research development, and I'm not wishing that because of war, but because of war, and Israel then defending itself and what happens, all of that data and information that they then gather, that American companies gather because their equipment is being used in a wartime situation, is invaluable to those companies in regard to development. And they would have to spend millions, if not billions and billions of dollars to actually gain that information that they can then gain on the front line. And for argument's sake, since the 7th of October, that is what is then not understood, may I say respectfully, by many people and within people that then say this is wrong. And just finally, if you think that little Israel, the size of New Jersey and the size of Wales over here within the UK, is going to dictate to the American military, then I have a bridge to sell you in regard to the control. There is a huge size difference, and it's how you then gain the information. And that is what people need to remember. And also, just finally, when people say, oh, they are controlling, there are two separate nations here who want at times the same outcome or a different outcome. Are they fair things to say?
Yeah, we have we have similar agreements with maybe 20 other countries. So it's more extensive with Israel. I mean, I'm not diminishing the significance of that, but it's the way it's being spun by the Quincy Institute and Trina Parsi and this, what they call it, the Center for Responsible Statecraft. They immediately say, oh, look, the Jews are controlling everything. So Olivier's got to go. But Olivier, give us your final thoughts before you leave. Like, what do you think we should be looking for, and maybe a little advice on, because this is a constant problem everywhere. I mean, we've all loved Catherine Austin Fitts on certain topics, okay? But she's exposed now. And Mark, I've been warning you for months about her, because you can kind of see the undercurrent. But I feel like, I forget who was the description the other day, maybe it was Joel Rosenberg, saying it's whack-a-mole, and everything going on in the Middle East. This happens and you do it, and then this and this. But it's the same way with anti-Semitism. It pops up everywhere. And what's the most effective way for us to respond to it? Because I don't think we can just let it go.
Well, first of all, people need to understand when they're watching the news, reading Twitter and whatnot, anything that falls under the 3Ds of Nathan Sharansky, double standards, demonization, and delegitimization, is defined as anti-Semitism. So you look at an event, a report, and you filter through that, and you're going to find out that a lot falls into those three. I believe, biblically speaking, that we have reached a point of no return. There's not going to be a slowing down of anti-Semitism anymore. There's not going to be a stop, an end to it, until Jesus returns. So now we have an obligation as Bible believers to continue to expose the lies and educate the audience, just like Mark said. We don't do this for self-gratification. We do this because we have an obligation as watchmen on the wall. And so what I'm seeing right now is that Christians globally have a great opportunity to be the opposite of what their ancestors were in the 30s and 40s. Too many bystanders. A bystander only facilitates the work of a perpetrator. Today, Bible-believing Christians, modern disciples of Yeshua, have a great opportunity to reach out to their Jewish friends and tell them, I got your back. I'm there for you. My house is a sanctuary if you need it. This is where we are, friends. Fighting anti-Semitism and letting the Jewish people know around us we're the true Christians who can help you. We still exist. And are you going to show them the article by Insurrection Barbie that we talked about?
I don't remember which one it was.
I got it overnight. It's about how to decipher propaganda. Superb article she wrote.
It's not the one about Mao, though. It's a different one, right?
No. Anyway.
I'll try to find the link and post it in the show notes, but go ahead and summarize it for us.
Right. Basically, she published an article encouraging people to decipher what they read and what they watch before they repost. It's about propaganda.
Right, it might be in propaganda.
Yeah.
Should start with 4 questions. So the underlying facts being claimed true.
Superb.
Is this person's interpretation justified by the underlying facts? Where did the original claim come from? Is there evidence of deceptive coordination, bias, or artificial amplification? So you see this like with, I hate to bring them up, we made it almost all the way to the end. We never brought up Tucker, but Tucker does this all the time. And he makes these statements when he's doing something and he says, well, everybody knows that that's true. Well, that's not, when you have to say that, it's obviously not true. You lying propagandist. That's
whatever that means.
Right. So, and he's worse than a propagandist. He's a lying propagandist.
Yes,
it's like an order of magnitude.
Yeah. So worse. I recommend, I posted this on my Telegram. I recommend everybody reads this.
What's your Telegram channel? Shalom and Messiah.
Updates at Shalom and Messiah. Yeah, Shalom and Messiah. Shalom
Okay.
and Messiah, you'll find it.
Okay. And Olivier, I do appreciate you taking the time to come. I know you got to run and catch a plane and have a safe trip back.
Are you going to walk me to the door?
I am not, no. I'm not going to even roll to the door with you on my little knee scooter because I'm going to continue to talk with Mark as we have the vital information to share.
Mark, it was good being with you.
So the people are not done. So Olivier, thank you.
John,
Olivier, thank you. I'll ask John to connect us because I'd love to talk to you while you're out in Israel as well.
Yes, I was thinking exactly the same, Mark. Let's connect real soon.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, he got one of those nifty. Well, I'll have to tell you about it separately, Mark. One of those little cameras, sort of like the DJI Pocket.
Brilliant.
It's a different model, and it's actually pretty cool. So
yeah.
Love you guys. Thanks for having
me. Bless you.
Buy me a video camera. So Olivier, thank you. I'm going to kick you out of the studio so you can walk out of here and everything. Thanks. And leave my AirPods. Don't take, because I don't want to have to come down and show up at your door.
I have my Air. Oh, that would be great.
Your wife might not like it, but anyway, thanks, Olivier. So anyway, so we got a couple of more things I want to talk about for a little bit more. So there was somebody asked a question earlier, is this the new format for updates? We'll probably do this again next week. It's a little bit difficult for me to do my PowerPoint presentations like I like to do without standing at a podium with some of the technology that we have. I can do it, but it's kind of hard just talking to a camera. So I like having the back and forth with Mark and and Olivier. It's great to have this, and so what's going on here? Okay, so I had somebody, I was getting feedback from someplace. So anyway, we have some things we want to talk about. So I think the first one, Mark, is world oil supply, which is tied to the shutdown of the Strait of Hormuz. There's only very few ships getting through. This used to have a lot of oil flowing through, like 160 ships a day, I think. And these are giant oil tankers. These are not just little, they're container ships. They also bring goods and services, fertilizer components, and that type of thing. That's not getting through. And I don't know what the fallout from this is. We're going to have we're coming into a different world than we've had before. So now the Houthis have started attacking Saudi related ships or Saudi flagged ships or ships that have visited Saudi ports are being attacked by the Houthis. And one of them, there was pretty much a direct missile hit on one, and it's a total loss, big tanker. And so what the Saudis had been doing was they have a pipeline across Saudi Arabia from their oil producing regions, which is over mostly in the Shia majority population area along the Persian Gulf in that region. And they had a pipeline and they started using it, and they're able to get 4 or 5 million barrels of oil a day across Saudi Arabia. They were sending out 7 million barrels a day. But so here we have this, and now the pipeline was attacked early on. They repaired it, but a pipeline can always be hit by a missile. And it just takes one missile to take out the pipeline or one strategically placed drone. And now the Houthis are threatening to attack the Saudi port on the Red Sea called Yanub. And at Yanub, that's where they load the oil tankers, and then they go through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait between the south part of the Arabian Peninsula and the Horn of Africa. And it's a pretty narrow strait. It's not, I don't know if it might be narrower than the Strait of Hormuz, but the Houthis are saying, you're not putting your oil there. That puts the Saudis in a very difficult situation because now they have to take the oil that would go through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait around the south end of the Arabian Peninsula to Asia. Instead, they have to go up through the Suez Canal, all the way through the Mediterranean, through the Strait of Gibraltar, then all the way around Africa. I think it changes a 10-day trip to a 40-day trip or something like that. It's because these tankers, they don't move, they're not like speedboats.
No.
And now the insurers have come out, Lloyd's came out today and other insurers and said, we're not giving anybody that has any ship that has any relationship to Saudi Arabia insurance. And the ship owners say, we're not going to do any shipping of oil from Saudi Arabia. And now that supply is effectively delayed at least 40 days or more. But then what happens if they start sending missiles into the Suez Canal? They shut down all the shipping there. And there's not many countries that are bordered on the Red Sea that produce a lot of goods and oil. You have Sudan, Eritrea, Somalia, Somaliland. Anyway, this is a huge problem for the world economy. Mark, any comments?
Yeah, it is a huge problem for the world economy. I'll just say this in regard to the UK, we need to be drilling and drilling in the North Sea, oil, gas, etc., as fast as possible. And all the green lunacy agenda that we have been facing since on all political sides in this country needs to have a load of realism. John, the other thing is just to quickly say, of course, when people say to us, what is going on? We're looking at things politically, what is going on geopolitically, and we're holding our Bible in our other hand, taught by wonderful Charles Spurgeon, as he did, newspaper in one hand, Bible in the other, and we are bringing these together. If you want to create the world chaos and start to control people and how they move, then one amazing way to do that is to shut down, of course, the oil supplies. It's very easy. I'll just quickly say this. It's very easy for some people to say, well, what Trump is doing within, this is my own opinion, within that theater is wrong. You must have seen that they'd shut down the Straits of Hormuz and all the rest. The concern over them having a nuclear weapon is a deep concern that is held since 1979 after the revolution in 1980. And also, as Rubio has pointed out, the concern, as you've just said, that the amount of ballistic missiles that the Iranians were then creating, and of course they would then use those ballistic missiles to defend any nuclear infrastructure that they have. Just quickly, in regard to the UK, the other day, as I noticed, you go past a garage where you would get your fuel, you then go past that garage within the next day, and then the per gallon, per litre has gone up by 3-4 pence literally overnight. So it's affecting us. That's why I say people need to throw out this green nut zero ideology in this country and in Europe, and wherever you can, go and drill. The big challenge for you in America is the amount of oil that you have in reserve. And then there could be a domestic cutoff because it all goes militarily. And also, yes, you are very oil independent, but that oil has to go and be refined. You may be able to pull out heavy oil out of the ground, but you then have got to have that refined so that then that can go within your vehicle. So it's energy independent. I personally believe oil is a gift from God, and then the oil fields refill up. That's a long story, but we need that independence. That's one of the biggest challenges for the UK idiots that run the governments on this side of the pond. And I also throw in the Conservatives who, as Theresa May left and signed up to the whole net zero thing. I'll shut up, but the kill box there in the Straits of Hormuz, this is the biggest challenge, John, that we are looking at, that the American administration is looking at. How do you handle that?
Yeah, it's a very difficult situation, and I still do not. I don't know how this is all going to play out. I'm sure, and we're going to talk about this at the Technocracy Roundtable on Wednesday night, July 29th at 7 p.m. Eastern. I'll put a plug in for that. Patrick Wood, Brit Gillette, Pete Garcia, Scott Townsend, maybe some others will be joining us. I don't know yet. So we'll do that. So I want to talk about a few more things. So we'll try to do this very quickly. So the Saudis, there's some question about, are they in or out of the Abraham Accords? The public statements of the Saudis have always been, we will join the Abraham Accords when you make provision for a two-state solution, a separate Palestinian state, yet another separate Palestinian state beyond Gaza, beyond Jordan. We want one in the West Bank. And this is, I think it's often called, the 1967 lines are called the Auschwitz lines, because the Palestinians have no desire to establish a state. They want to use that state as a base to destroy Israel. That's everything they said. So if there was elections now, probably they would elect Hamas to run everything. So the Saudis now, there was this announcement this week, and this is, listen, I'm not in Washington, so I can only report on what's going on. And Trump came out and said the Saudis are going to get nuclear ability, and that might include enrichment. That's a very complex issue under U.S. law, by the way. I researched this when I was going to the Middle East Forum. There are these things called 123 agreements. So there was an agreement signed between the U.S. Department of Energy and the Saudis about nuclear production on Saudi soil. Trump then came out on True Social and said, wait a minute, no, though, that's contingent on the Saudis agreeing to join the Abraham Accords. But the Saudis say we won't join the Abraham Accords unless there's a two-state provision for a two-state solution. So I don't know everything that's going on in the background. I don't think Mohammed bin Salman is a fan of the Palestinian cause, but I personally think that he's not changing things out of respect for his father, who is now, I think, approaching 91. We don't know how long King Salman will be around. I think things will change when King Salman goes, but Prince Salman, Mohammed bin Salman, may decide to do things differently. It would be a departure from usual Saudi generational respect, I guess, is the way to do it. Because his father was very big. I think it was his father's brother who started the Arab Peace Initiative not too long after 9/11. It was in early 2002. And so the Saudis have said, that's what we want. Two-state solution, 1967 lines. And Israel's not going to agree to that. But by the way, there is a Rome meeting tomorrow, Tuesday and Wednesday, about the New York Declaration to advance the two-state solution. And in connection with that meeting, it's UN and other governments and NGOs and everything. They're saying they want interfaith dialogue with it. So this is very important, and as we look at these various end time scenarios as to how this might be working out. So what do you make of all this back and forth with Trump putting this condition on? And I've been looking at the Saudi press, haven't read the Arab news from today or others. I don't see anything. I just don't see the Saudis having responded to that demand of Trump in any way. Now, some people would say that means the Saudis have already agreed to that. They're going to do that, and they just haven't made a formal announcement. What do you think, Mark?
One of the big issues with the Saudis, I say from a certain limited opinion, certain limited experience, is the fact that we just have no idea what is going on behind closed doors with some of these countries, because on the other hand, they're turning around and going, will you please take out Iran? Will you deal with that? And then next minute, we're seeing various leaders attending the funeral of, the recent Ayatollah death. So it's as though, why are you surprised I'm going to say this? You'll have one direction out one side of someone's mouth, and then you'll have another direction out of another side of someone's mouth, John. This is what is difficult, and that's why the Israelis have said things in regard to Iran. You can't negotiate. And also, on the other hand, there is back channels. We know there is back channels. There is relationships that they then have with all these different countries, including Israel. They have those, but we are not privy to those discussions because there's a private face and a public face for understandable reasons, on the one hand, in the beliefs of the citizens within their own country, and also the beliefs of the royal family, John, is my opinion on that.
Yeah, I agree. It's very difficult to this is really difficult stuff, I think. Let's see where I want to go. So this week was the 9th of Av in Israel. And I'm not going to play for you. You can go to Hillel Fold's channel and other Jewish accounts on X and elsewhere and find a lot of videos of just this massive crowd at the Western Wall Plaza singing and lamenting what happened on the 9th of Av. 2 Jewish temples were destroyed.
Yeah.
It's and oops, are you still having me?
Yep. Loud and clear.
I bumped my mic. So there were a lot of Jews on the Temple Mount this week, maybe 1,400. And they were singing, they were carrying Israeli flags, they were praying, singing, prostrating themselves. And Muslims were banned from the Temple Mount that day. This happens on a regular basis. And of course, the Saudi press was like, the Arab News had a big article that said, Jews storm Temple Mount. And I've been up there when there's been a group of 30 or 40 Jewish people walking on the Temple Mount, and they're not storming anything. They're just walking around the Temple Mount, remembering what the importance of the Temple Mount still means to them. Not and what it meant, but what it still means to them. So and so Ben Gvir, he's sort of a flashpoint in Israel. This is a post this morning from Rawan Osman. I would follow her on social media, Facebook and everything. This is a Facebook post. She is Syrian Lebanese. I think she had one of her parents was Sunni, one of her parents was Shia. She hated Jews because that's the only thing she was ever taught. And then she moved to Germany and she met Jews and she was like, these are like normal people. What's wrong with the way I was raised? So she's now, I think, in the process of moving to Israel or has already moved to Israel. We met her over at the Ministry for Foreign Affairs when we were there back in November last year, Mark, if you remember.
Yep.
And she's quite good. She's a very articulate spokesperson for Israel. And she does much better than me. She puts up like a 1 or 2 minute video to get to the point. She doesn't drone on like I do. But she was making the point in this post, and this is something you always need to do. This is you need to watch for propaganda. So there was a post, there's a video of Ben Gvir out there saying certain things. What people did was they took the post in Hebrew and they put in very inflammatory subtitles in English and distributed it on social media. So now everybody who hates Ben Gvir really hates Ben Gvir because, well, he said these terrible things, but he didn't really say that. He was addressing, he's in the Netanyahu cabinet, internal security or police or something is his portfolio. And he is a bit of a publicity hound. But the point is, he didn't say what everybody is saying that he said. So when you see these things, be careful about sharing them. Do a little bit of research. There are tools out there, like there's a free tool called TurboScribe. You can download the video, run it through TurboScribe, and you can get the Hebrew to English translation. And you'll find a lot of times that they make these things up. Mark?
No, I fully agree with you. As just to remind people about people like Edward Bernays and this whole thing of the history of propaganda and what happens. And we have to be, again, we have to be extremely careful. I've got caught out, I admit, in the past of certain things sharing, and then people have pulled me up and gone, that isn't true. Fair enough. You put your hands up. It's very important. That doesn't mean that we don't share things. It just means that we make sure that we're informed. And I ask my dear friends in America to please don't forget the rest of us that don't live in America, because sometimes you're not getting all the news, which is why John does what he does and has done for a number of years, which is trying to pull all this information together to inform you outside the news cycle and the sound bites that we get over here. We have to go and do the deep dive, because there is one thing that, if we get a chance, especially with the UK news, that I would like to bring to everyone's attention.
Right. So I have one more thing I want to do. Do you have anything you want to share about
Yeah,
UK
I do.
or anything?
I
Okay.
do. There's one. So, as you know, we have recently just had yet the 7th Prime Minister in 10 years. A fantastic, there's a very good channel, Jim Chim-Iri on Twitter. Follow him. I'm just going to read this. Burnham handed the Hamas file to a Hamas sympathizer. In March 2010, Andy Slaughter wrote in The Guardian that Britain should negotiate without preconditions with Hamas. He had just returned from an undeclared trip to Gaza, where he says he met Faraj al-Ghul and then Hamas Justice Minister and Dr. Ahmed Youssef, the Deputy Foreign Minister and right-hand man to Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh. No entry for that trip appears in his register of members' interest in regard to Parliament and what they're up to and where they've been, despite parliamentary rules at the time requiring declaration of benefits over £660. And finally, 8 months later, he was in Jerusalem with Jeremy Corbyn, photographed alongside 3 men with document Hamas affiliations on a £927 trip funded by Friends of Alaska and Middle East Monitor. One of the trip sponsors, Ismail Patel, had told a rally the year before that Hamas was no terrorist organization and that he saluted it for standing up for Israel. Slaughter is now, if I have my facts right, the Solicitor General inside the Andy Burnham government administration. So we, along with the fact that there's another advisor there, Hayden Monroe, who was connected with Jacinda Ardern's lot in New Zealand. So this is why we have to do the research. But coming back to this individual, where now we have people that want to negotiate and say, Hamas, let's talk to these people because they seem to be okay. Sorry, but I need to find the sick bucket. But this is how serious it is.
Was this guy involved in Tony Blair's government when he did this thing about no preconditions on negotiating with Hamas?
I cannot say off the top of my head, but it is March 2010. It would have been the Brown government. Okay. Tony Blair stood down in 2007. So that's something that we could look at, John. But I just wanted to illustrate to you, my friend, and to listeners who very much give us their time, is how serious it is over here at the moment, yet again, and who then is advising people or is then allowed within the government administration. There's so much to explain from one handover, which we don't have time, from Keir Starmer to another faction within the Labour Party. And also to just quickly say that suddenly Burnham becoming Prime Minister, certain things were in play. It's now been revealed for far longer than we would even imagine. But for those of us that are trying to pay attention, not because we are being clever, but just to say this, that if you want to create a one world government system, as the Bible talks about, then each individual country will have to come to that point. And each individual country, in my humble opinion, is attacked in many different ways. And I just draw, friends in the States, draw you to what is happening again within your country, especially in regard to Islam and where that's playing out in Texas, Dearborn, Michigan, and elsewhere. And then we have to look at the European Union, other countries, and how that is playing out. John's already showed us the comments from Islamophobia from Australia. Just finally, when you have got people like Hayden Monroe, who were with Jacinda Ardern, as someone who reported on this, whose name, sorry, has just gone, the fact, I think it's Connor Tomlinson, would talk about the fact that of collectivism, the way that these people with a collectivist social mindset who are giving advice will move from one government to another, it seems. So there we go.
Okay. Yeah, and this will have a big impact too, I think, on the negotiations that are kind of underway with regard to the Board of Peace in Gaza, and Tony Blair being directly involved in that, and how they're talking about negotiating with Hamas, and this is my problem: is you can't negotiate with Hamas.
No,
you have to defeat them, just like you can't negotiate with the Iranian regime. Because I think it was David Wormser this week is Iran doesn't want a deal; they want a negotiation, and I think that sort of summarizes everything. So, a couple more things. We talk a lot about Turkey. I have a thing on Turkey, and then I have a thing about Israel that we'll finish up with. So this first thing that I want to do with regard to Turkey is there was this interesting, I'm going to turn the sound down on this. So this is Esra Alabayek, who is a PhD sociologist in Turkey. She is the daughter of President Erdogan. And she was speaking, this is from about 2 months ago, May 10, 11 or so, in Istanbul, Constantinople, maybe we should call it. And it was called the World Decolonization Forum. And this is kind of interesting. It says this is a think tank. Greg Roman at Middle East Forum's done a good job looking at about 21 anti-American think tanks. I would say this think tank, I don't think was in Greg's report, but it is a think tank that people need to be aware of because it's not an anti-American think tank, it's an anti-world think tank. And this is what this organization called Restore Canada, which is a very pro-Canadian nationalist, stop this invasion that's coming from Islamic areas. And so it says she spoke about their endeavor to decolonize the West. And this is ironic because the Turks completely colonized the Anatolia Peninsula. They took over. They kicked the Greeks out. They took over. They took over Constantinople, renamed it Istanbul, and then 6 years ago, in fact, this was the 6-year anniversary of Erdogan turning Hagia Sophia, the largest church ever built in Christianity, back into a mosque. And so, for her, as the daughter of the president of the colonizing Turks, to stand there and say, we want to decolonize the West, it sort of sets off all your irony alarms. And she says the first phase of their plan, as she says, is not within the political realm, but in the realm of knowledge and thought. This is Mamdani's technique. This is the Red-Green Alliance technique. Then this post from Restore Canada says their alliance is not advocating for a world without the West. Rather, there is an open invitation for the West to accept its own decolonization. The current centers of knowledge located in Paris, London, Amsterdam, and New York need to be replaced by new centers in Istanbul, Jakarta, Addis Ababa, Rabat, Cairo, and Gaza. All Islamic centers for the most part. And they don't want to decolonize the West. They want to Islamicize the West. Mark, any comments?
The only comment I can make is the fact that, as you've just said, they want to completely Islamify the Islamification of the West. People, I've said it twice, 3 times, get to know your history, get to know what we are dealing with. At the end of the day, there is only one way, and that is Jesus. And these people need Jesus, and they need to know Jesus as their Lord and Savior as much as everyone else. So there is only one way, as much as that's completely unpopular to a collectivist socialist mindset. They are being very emboldened. They didn't talk about the Armenian genocide there at all, did they, John, in that particular speech, as you quite rightly raised what had gone on in there. And also she didn't talk about the Turkey, the greater Turkey, in regard to the present, what's happened in Syria and al-Shawad or Gilani, or the leader of Syria. So they didn't mention that either. Or Trump's tweet of, as you've quoted so many times, John, I noticed what you did, Erdogan. So there we go. They didn't mention that, did they? Or did I miss that?
No, I don't. It's very interesting. I mean, we see this push by Turkey to be involved in anything. They were a little bit quiet this week, but everybody they talk about, and they're the one And I know we have this dispute in our community over Gog, Magog, and all this other thing. I think it's Turkey. I think Turkey's the lead. Others think it's Russia. That's fine. When it happens, we'll know, right? So I'm not saying that Russia won't be involved, but we see the rise of Turkey pretty dramatically. And I think whatever we've gone through with Iran on nuclear issues and that type of thing is going to be compressed with Turkey. And now I think with Saudi Arabia also with this nuclear deal, although I don't know if, I'll give you an example. So Trump went to Turkey for the NATO meeting and he said, F-35's going to Turkey. The State Department came out yesterday and said, no, Turkey doesn't meet the compliance standards to come into the F-35 program, the standards set by either statute or regulation because of their S-400 air defense systems that they have from Russia, although they're trying to sell those, but they're also very tied into China and that type of thing. So I just don't know that this is going to happen. So they're not coming into the F-35 program. And then there are also statute and regulations about that would apply to the Saudis, I think, on what's called a 123 agreement, whether they would sign on to that to be able to get access to nuclear fuel and enrich it. I don't know that that's a foregone conclusion. Even if they agree to come into the Abraham Accords, I'm not sure that Trump can get around the law, but I don't know the ins and outs of the law. There might be exceptions that the executive can do. I'm just not sure. So I'm going to do one more thing. So this week was the 9th of Av, and in Israel, and by the way, I'm going to make a shameless plug. I am doing an Israel tour next fall. There should be a link on the fbchapel.com website at the top of the page about the fall 2027. It's probably September, October. It's at Sukkot. A lot of people don't like to go at Sukkot. I kind of like to go at Sukkot. It's a challenge, but a blessing at the same time because there's a lot of Shabbats that week. But a lot of Jewish people go to hotels on Shabbat and the food is pretty good. So the hotels kind of up their game on the food aspect. So that'll be in the fall. It is limited in size, but please sign up if you do that. And I promise not to try my best not to get hit in the rear end by people. So I have to have surgery again next year, but it'll be great. So one of the things we did on our tour this last year, and I'll share this screen. This is a video from Yishai Fleischer's website. He did, the title of the video is, and I'll just turn it on, there's no sound. These are Solomon's pools. These are located between Efrat, which is a Jewish community in the Judean hills south of Jerusalem, about halfway between Jerusalem and Hebron, and then the south part of Bethlehem. So this is, Yishai went down there with his daughter and a bunch of people. I think I recognize some of the people in the group that went down there. These are pools where they were part of the water system to supply water to the Temple Mount. Aqueducts flowed from there to the Temple Mount, not to the city of David, but to the Temple of Mount to supply the water needed for the temple. There's cisterns all over the Temple Mount. There's mikvahs. But these, I mean, you can see the size of these pools, and you'll see here Yishai is going to be interviewing a developer. Here he is, interviewing a developer. This guy came and spoke to our group for several hours about real estate development in Efrat, building 7,000 new homes. And we met him. We weren't able to go down to the thing here. This is a Jewish site of water for the Jewish temple in Jerusalem. And they had to go in there with an armed IDF escort. Because on the one side of where they are up the hill is the south part of Bethlehem. On the other side is Efrat, and these sit in the valley in between. And we were in Efrat last year. I was talking to a guy And I asked him what he did. He said he was a lawyer. And I said, I'm a lawyer. And he goes, and he noticed I was looking at his gun. Everybody in Efrat carries a gun. You see Yishai carrying a gun. You go to the synagogue and you sit down and people are carrying weapons like that. And they put them under their seat because the Jewish lawyer explained to me, he goes, I want you to look at the front of my house. So his house faces Bethlehem. He said, look at my house. And it's a very beautiful stone front, as all the buildings are in Efrat. But there are bullet marks all over it. He said, because they fire bullets at my house from Bethlehem. That's why we carry guns down here, because we're under constant threat. And there's not a huge security fence between that area and Efrat. And it's a constant problem. Jonathan Feldstein, our friend Jonathan Feldstein, talks about this. He looks out of his house in Efrat, and he can look across a field to a giant mosque that is a terrorism center. So this is very exciting stuff. So here are Solomon's pools. They're developing them. And eventually, in fact, the week before we were there last year, there were Jews swimming in Solomon's pools. Now, they're not doing that right now, but some people went down there and were swimming in Solomon's pools, which is kind of this is a very big deal. Mark, any comments, and then we'll wrap this up.
Well, I'm just smiling at that last point. It is a huge deal when you it's reminding me of, I know it's a different country, Jordan, but it's just reminding me of going to Petra last year. But that is a major, huge deal. Again, archaeologically, history, and putting all that in context. No wonder some people don't like it when you're showing them the receipts. This is history. We can't argue. I'm just imagining how that was dug out, how that was created, etc. Yeah, quite amazing, John. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, you should go watch it. Yishai is there, and Yishai's daughter Leah. Yishai is the official spokesperson for the Jewish community of Hebron. So he's very big on Machpelah, and his daughter Leah, who I had the pleasure of meeting a few years ago. She was on the trip, and she does some of the narration, and it was good to see her and Yishai down there. It's an incredibly exciting site, and you look at this guy, and this guy is, I forget what he did. He might have been in law school or something, and he came to Israel. Now he's a developer, and they're building like 7,000 homes in Efrat. And we went up to the site last year. This is because they need room, and you go around Jerusalem, Mark, the construction in Jerusalem is off the charts. By the way, folks, so last week they did discover in the area of the city of David. So if you've been to the city of David, you enter at I think it's called the Davidson Center to go to the city of David. As you're going into the city of David, off to the right, they were excavating and they found beams from building of the First Temple period. And this is in the week that they're doing 9th of Av. There always seems to be some connection to the calendar when these things are discovered. It's amazing what happens. And so as they're digging in Jerusalem and they're redoing all the roads, and they're putting in light rail lines all over the place. The traffic is terrible. People that live in Jerusalem tell me, I'm not sure how to get from here to there anymore because the roads are all torn up and they're putting in light rail lines everywhere. But as they're doing this, they keep finding these archaeological finds. And this is very significant. Now, a lot of that's not publicized yet, but it will be. You'll just watch the archaeological reports coming out of Israel. I think I'm going to do a live thing with Joel Blackford on early August, maybe August 5th, with Scott Stripling, who's an archaeologist, has done a lot of excavation at Shiloh. So I'll be participating in that. Anyway, Mark, any final thoughts, and then we'll wrap this up.
There's Final thought is it's just been great to be with you, and it's been great to be with you over the last few weeks, and just praying for your recovery so you can get back in the church and present this after the service in the way that you have done for many years. So yeah, just keep John and dear Pam in your prayers. It's important, and praise God that the stair lift works. We don't need any more aggravations like that. John doesn't need it, and nor does Pam. So
Pray for my wife. It's been hard on her. I mean, it really has been.
It's not easy. So we need him, both of them, up and running 100% health-wise as well. So
it does help that I'm such a patient.
Well,
she would be laughing if she heard me say that.
Yeah.
So.
I'm not going to make any comment along those lines.
The other day she said, "Can I get you anything?" And I said, "Yeah, time machine. Either move me back 5 months or forward 6 months."
Well, the other thing is, I'm not going to go into it, but people just, when these things happen, there is so many things to organize and deal with and paperwork and all the rest. So just bear all of that in your prayers as well. And again, I just urge people, go and do your own research. Don't accept what we say. Go and do your research. So you're in a position to be informed, because as you come across people who don't know Jesus as their Lord and Savior, they're going to say, hopefully, what is going on in the world? And it gives you an opportunity to explain and then steer them in and steer them into preaching the gospel to them. So I just say that. Thanks,
Okay.
John.
Okay, everybody, thank you for joining. I appreciate it. I'll be back doing regular updates in the traditional style, I guess, on, I think, August 6th. No, wait. The first, August 9th, I think the first Sunday in August. And so I think I'll be able to navigate. I'll be wearing one of those big, ugly boots. I think I should be able to do that. I'll also be preaching in September. I'll also be at Rock Harbor Church in Bakersfield, California, September 13th. I'll be doing all 3 services that day. So if you want to come down and see us, that would be great. Thank you for watching, moderators. Again, thank you for the great work that you do, everybody. Thank you. I think everybody was behaving today. It's always a blessing. Thanks for watching. Like, share, subscribe. And I will see you Wednesday night for the next Prophecy Roundtable on technocracy, transhumanism, AI, Mark of the Beast technology. Thank you, everybody. Mark, I'll say goodbye on the other side. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.